The Natural History is an early encyclopedia in Latin by Pliny the Elder, who died in 79 AD. It is one of the largest single works to have survived from the Roman Empire to the modern day and purports to cover all ancient knowledge. The work's subject area is thus not limited to what is today understood by natural history. Pliny himself defines his scope as the natural world, or life. The work is divided into 37 books, organized into 10 volumes. These cover topics including astronomy, mathematics, geography, ethnography, anthropology, human physiology, zoology, botany, agriculture, horticulture, pharmacology, mining, mineralogy, sculpture, painting, and precious stones. The Natural History became a model for later encyclopedias and scholarly works as a result of its breadth of subject matter, its referencing of original authors, and its index. The work is dedicated to the Emperor Titus, son of Pliny's close friend, the Emperor Vespasian, in the first year of Titus's reign. It is the only work by Pliny to have survived and the last that he published. He began it in 77, and had not made a final revision at the time of his death during the AD 79 eruption of Vesuvius. Overview: Pliny's Natural History was written alongside other substantial works. Pliny combined his scholarly activities with a busy career as an imperial administrator for the Emperor Vespasian. Much of his writing was done at night. Daytime hours were spent working for the emperor. As he explains in the dedicatory preface addressed to Vespasian's elder son, the future Emperor Titus, with whom he had served in the army. As for the nocturnal hours spent writing, these were seen, not as a loss of sleep, but as an addition to life. For, as he states in the preface, vita vigilia est, to be alive is to be watchful, in a military metaphor of a sentry keeping watch in the night. Pliny claims to be the only Roman ever to have undertaken such a work. In his prayer for the blessing of the Universal Mother, "Hail to thee, nature, thou parent of all things! And do thou deign to show thy favor unto me, who, alone of all the citizens of Rome, have, in thy every department, thus made known thy praise." The Natural History is encyclopedic in scope, but its format is unlike a modern encyclopedia. A modern reader will not find dedicated articles on the natural history of the chameleon, the medical uses of cabbage, or the effects of goat's blood on diamond. The work does, however, have structure. Pliny uses Aristotle's division of nature to recreate the natural world in literary form, rather than presenting compartmentalized, stand-alone entries arranged alphabetically. Pliny's ordered natural landscape is a coherent whole, offering the reader a guided tour, a brief excursion under our direction among the whole of the works of nature. The work is unified but varied. My subject is the world of nature, or in other words, life, he tells Titus. Nature for Pliny was divine, a pantheistic concept inspired by the Stoic philosophy which underlies much of his thought. But the deity in question was a goddess whose main purpose was to serve the human race. Nature, that is life, is human life in a natural landscape. After an initial survey of cosmology and geography, Pliny starts his treatment of animals with the human race, for whose sake great nature appears to have created all other things. This teleological view of nature was common in antiquity and is crucial to the understanding of the natural history. The components of nature are not just described in and for themselves, but also with a view to their role in human life. Pliny devotes a number of the books to plants, with a focus on their medicinal value. The books on minerals include descriptions of their uses in architecture, sculpture, painting and jewelry. If Pliny's premise seems remote from modern ecological theories, the result is a compendium of an entire culture. Pliny's work frequently reflects Rome's imperial expansion, which brought new and exciting things to the capital. Exotic Eastern spices, strange animals to be put on display or herded into the arena. Even the alleged phoenix sent to the Emperor Claudius in AD 47, although, as Pliny admits, this was generally acknowledged to be a fake. Pliny repeated Aristotle's maxim that Africa was always producing something new. Nature's variety and versatility were claimed to be infinite. When I have observed nature, she has always induced me to deem no statement about her incredible. This led Pliny to recount rumors of strange peoples on the edges of the world. These monstrous races, the cynocephali or dogheads, the Cyapidae, whose single foot could act as a sunshade, the mouthless Astami, who lived on scents, were not strictly new. They had been mentioned by the Greek historian Herodotus in the 5th century BC, but Pliny made him better known as full of variety as nature itself, stated Pliny's nephew, Pliny the Younger. And this verdict largely explains the appeal of the natural history since Pliny's death in the eruption of Vesuvius in AD 79. Pliny had gone to investigate the strange cloud, shaped like an umbrella pine, according to his nephew, rising from the mountain. The natural history was one of the first ancient European texts to be printed, in Venice in 1469. Philemon Holland's English translation of 1605 has influenced literature ever since. Table of Contents. The natural history consists of 37 books. Pliny devised his own table of contents. The table below is a summary based on modern names for topics. Production. Purpose. Pliny's purpose in writing the natural history was to cover all learning and art so far as they're connected with nature or draw their materials from nature. He says that my subject is a barren one, the world of nature, or in other words life, and that subject in its least elevated department, and employing either rustic terms or foreign, nay barbarian words that actually have to be introduced with an apology. Moreover, the path is not a beaten highway of authorship, nor one in which the mind is eager to range. There is not one of us who has made the same venture, nor yet one Roman who has tackled single-handed all departments of the subject. Sources. Pliny studied the original authorities on each subject and took care to make excerpts from their pages. His Indices Auctorum sometimes list the authorities he actually consulted, though not exhaustively. In other cases, they cover the principal writers on the subject, whose names are borrowed second-hand for his immediate authorities. He acknowledges his obligations to his predecessors, to own up to those who were the means of one's own achievements. In the preface, the author claims to have stated 20,000 facts gathered from some 2,000 books and from 100 select authors. The extant lists of his authorities cover more than 400, including 146 Roman and 327 Greek and other sources of information. The lists generally follow the order of the subject matter of each book. This has been shown in Heinrich Brunn's Disputatio. One of Pliny's authorities is Marcus Terentius Varro. In the geographical books, Varro is supplemented by the topographical commentaries of Agrippa, which were completed by the Emperor Augustus. For his zoology, he relies largely on Aristotle and on Juba, the scholarly Mauritanian king. Studiorum claritat memorabilia quam regno. Juba is one of his principal guides in botany. Theophrastus is also named in his indices, and Pliny had translated Theophrastus's Greek into Latin. Another work by Theophrastus, on stones, was cited as a source on ores and minerals. Pliny strove to use all the Greek histories available to him, such as Herodotus and Thucydides, as well as the Bibliotheca Historica of Diodorus Siculus. Working method. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, described the method that Pliny used to write the natural history. Does it surprise you that a busy man found time to finish so many volumes, many of which deal with such minute details? He used to begin to study at night on the festival of Vulcan, not for luck but from his love of study. Long before dawn, in winter he would commence at the 7th hour. He could sleep at call, and it would come upon him and leave him in the middle of his work. Before daybreak he would go to Vespasian, for he too was a night worker, and then set about his official duties. On his return home he would again give to study any time that he had free. often in summer after taking a meal, which with him, as in the old days, was always a simple and light one. He would lie in the sun if he had any time to spare, and a book would be read aloud, from which he would take notes and extracts. Pliny the Younger told the following anecdote illustrating his uncle's enthusiasm for study. After dinner a book would be read aloud, and he would take notes in a cursory way. I remember that one of his friends, when the reader pronounced a word wrongly, checked him and made him read it again, and my uncle said to him, "Did you not catch the meaning?" When his friend said, "Yes," he remarked, "Why then did you make him turn back? We have lost more than 10 lines through your interruption." So jealous was he of every moment lost. Style. Pliny's writing style emulates that of Seneca. It aims less at clarity and vividness than at epigrammatic point. It contains many antitheses, questions, exclamations, tropes, metaphors, and other mannerisms of the Silver Age. His sentence structure is often loose and straggling. There is heavy use of the ablative absolute, and ablative phrases are often appended in a kind of vague apposition, to express the author's own opinion of an immediately previous statement. E.g., dixit, unosce prade stare, quod manum de tabula siat tola, memorabila praecepta nocera seponimium diligentium. This might be translated, in one thing Apelles stood out, namely, knowing when he had put enough work into a painting. A salutary warning. Too much effort can be counterproductive. The whole of the second sentence represents the ablative phrase starting with memorabila praecepta. Publication history. First publication. Pliny wrote the first 10 books in AD 77, and was engaged on revising the rest during the 2 remaining years of his life. The work was probably published with little revision by the author's nephew Pliny the Younger, who, when telling the story of a tame dolphin and describing the floating islands of the Vademonian lake 30 years later, has apparently forgotten that both are to be found in his uncle's work. He describes the Naturalis Historia as a Natura Historia and characterizes it as a work that is learned and full of matter, and as varied as nature herself. The absence of the author's final revision may explain many errors, including why the text is, as John Healy writes, disjointed, discontinuous and not in a logical order, and as early as 1350. Petrarch complained about the corrupt state of the text, referring to copying errors made between the 9th and 11th centuries. Manuscripts about the middle of the 3rd century. An abstract of the geographical portions of Pliny's work was produced by Solinus. Early in the 8th century, Bede, who admired Pliny's work, had access to a partial manuscript which he used in his De Rerum Natura, especially the sections on meteorology and gems. However, Bede updated and corrected Pliny on the tides. There are about 200 extant manuscripts, but the best of the more ancient manuscripts, that at Bamberg State Library, contains only books XXXII 37. In 1141 Robert of Cricklade wrote the De Floratia Historiae Naturalis Pliny Secunda, consisting of 9 books of selections taken from an ancient manuscript. Printed copies. The work was one of the first classical manuscripts to be printed, at Venice in 1469 by Johann and Wendelin of Speyer, but J.F. Healy described the translation as distinctly imperfect. A copy printed in 1472 by Nicholas Jensen of Venice is held in the library at Wells Cathedral. Translations. Philemon Holland made an influential translation of much of the work into English in 1601. John Bostock and H. T. Riley made a complete translation in 1855.